The rich man's Roth has 300% more benefits. In this episode, I'm going to address the question, Roth IRA or IUL? The rich man's Roth, which is better? Hi, I'm Doug Andrew, and I've helped people optimize their financial assets for north of 4.5 decades and minimize taxes and prepare for a comfortable retirement. My favorite vehicle by far for people to accumulate their money tax-free and then be able to access their money tax-free all through their golden years. And then at the end of the day, when they finally pass away, whatever they leave behind blossoms in value and transfers income tax-free is what I call the laser fund. Laser is an acronym that stands for liquid assets, safely earning returns. And if you stay to the end of this episode, I want to gift you a copy of my most recent best-selling 300-page book, The Laser Fund. It retails for $20, but I'll show you how you can claim your copy free. Now, when people ask me the question, what's better? A Roth IRA? Because a lot of people, they begin to watch my educational videos on this very channel, and they begin to realize, wait, Mr. Andrew has never owned an IRA or 401k, and he says he never will? Then they learn and they go, okay, he says a Roth is a step in the right direction, but he's never owned a Roth IRA or 401k and never will. Well, where does he put his money? In IUL, Indexed Universal Life Insurance Contracts, which many savvy CPAs and tax attorneys refer to as the rich man's Roth. And I snicker because you don't have to be rich to have one. I mean, you can set one up and sock away $500 a month. But wealthy people, rich people, if you make too much money, you cannot own a Roth. So this is where they put their money, but it's also very beneficial for people who would not consider themselves as rich. So let me explain how these all came about and when historically Roths were first started. So for years, people were told to put money into tax-deferred IRAs and 401ks, and get a tax break on the contribution money, and let it accumulate tax-deferred. And when you go to retire and you take out the money from the IRAs or 401ks, you'll pay tax, but you'll likely be in a lower bracket then. Now, that was the premise. That has not been true or axiomatic for more than 25 years. And it took the financial services industry until just the last few years to finally admit, yeah, that was probably the wrong advice, but they don't want to be responsible for you maybe outliving your money due to taxes going up. So they sort of just back off. And so still 91% of Americans, I think, are duped into putting money into traditional IRAs and 401ks. When a Roth, I can prove if taxes go up in the future, which most Americans believe they will, a Roth can generate 25%, 33%, 50% more in net spendable income, or it can last much longer than the same amount of money at the same rate of return in a traditional IRA or 401k just because of taxes. If taxes go up, you want it to be tax-free, not continue to pay tax at higher and higher rates during your golden years. It's that simple. When did Roths come about? Well, in 1997, the government was hard up for tax revenue. And so Senator Roth said, I have an idea and we'll name it after me. A lot of Americans are realizing it's far better to pay tax on the contribution money, take after-tax money and put it into a savings account like an IRA or 401k and have it be tax-free as it grows. But when they take it out, it's tax-free down the road when taxes are going to be higher. People are getting smart. So he says, let's offer a Roth, name it after me. And so what did that do? It was more for their benefit than your benefit. I'm not saying it wasn't a step in the right direction, but if people convert from a traditional IRA or 401k to a Roth, it triggers tax. you have to pay the tax. And then it's tax-free thereafter. That created a huge windfall for the federal government because a lot of people who were smart, they converted to Roths. And the government got a whole bunch of tax revenue. They didn't have to wait till people retired to start getting their tax revenue. Well, when they got hard up for money again, they introduced the Roth 401k. So see, it was a step in the right direction, but Roths only have two benefits. So oftentimes when people hear me on the radio, I've had a national radio show for 12 years, and they do double takes. Why? Now, before I explain why, if this is intriguing you, and you can think of somebody who ought to hear this information, be sure and share, post a comment, but subscribe to the Three-Dimensional Wealth channel and be sure and click that little bell so that you'll be notified every time I post an in-depth answer that's going to educate you on opportunities that maybe you didn't know existed before, because I post them almost daily. So when people hear me on the radio, they say, what did Doug say on the radio? Well, recently I've been saying now may be the perfect time to get taxes over with on IRAs and 401ks, because your current tax bracket is likely the lowest bracket you will ever be in. And so I will often talk about, hey, if you stay until the end, and I'm talking about the end of this episode, you're going to understand how to save hundreds of thousands of dollars of unnecessary tax, how to not outlive your money in retirement, how to not lose money when the economy and the markets whipsaw, which they will continue to do, and how to have 50 to 100% more in net spendable income. Would you like to learn these things? Well, first of all, if you're feeling anxious, like the Great Recession, what's the Great Recession? The years 2000 to 2010, I'm going to go to 2012. It's the worst 12-year period since the Great Depression. See, a lot of people who have their money in tax-deferred IRAs or 401ks in the market, we're going to start with November 8th of 1999. Let's say they spent their entire life accumulating $1 million in their tax-deferred IRAs or 401ks in the market. They saw that $1 million nest egg go down in value after the terrorist attacks of 2001, 9/11, for 3 consecutive years, 35, 40, some people lost 50%. If you lose 40%, which was the average, a 40% loss has to be followed by a 67% gain to get back to break even right here, If 100,000 goes down to 60,000, if $1 million goes down to 600,000, 600,000 has to grow by 67%, 400,000, to get back what you lost. A 40% loss has to be followed by a 67% gain. It took 4 years to do that. People felt like they lost their future. They had to put off retirement 7 years. Very frustrated. Then what happened in 2008? As Warren Buffett put it, he said, when the tide went out in 2008, it revealed who was swimming naked, is what he said. In other words, they weren't protected, they didn't learn, and they lost 40% again for the second time in a decade. It took 4 years to come back to break even, and finally, 12 years later, they had $1,046,800 to show for the million they started with. How pathetic is that? It didn't even buy the same gallons of gas and loaves of bread that $1 million did back here because of inflation. Now, what's the point? People using the laser fund, when this market went down, 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 they didn't lose. They may not have made much of anything, but their money stayed steady. As soon as the market turned around, they started making money again. So they're clear up here when most Americans are only here. When the market went down again, they stayed up here. They didn't make much of anything, but then they started making money again. And I'm going to show you the difference with people who have their money linked to the market, but not in the market. This is called indexing. And it's a feature that only exists with the max funded insurance contracts in the way that I'm talking about right now. So what it means is, if we took this 10-year period, because a lot of people weren't even back to break even at the end of 2010, people using the laser fund, they made money, but when the market went down, even if they earned zip, they didn't lose. They started making money again, and when the market dived again, they held steady, and then they started making money again. Even when people only had 68,000 to show for their 100,000, people here had 178,000. And then I showed you in the previous chart, 2 years later, many people had 2.5 to 3 times the money when most Americans, this red line was barely back up here again. Is this arousing curiosity? Watch. So my recommendation to people who have their life savings in yet to be taxed IRAs and 401ks in the market, get it out of the market, strategically roll the money out. This isn't a rollover. So what is this? See, a rollover is like going from the frying pan into the fire, as far as I'm concerned. You're taking money in 401ks and rolling it over to IRAs, continuing to delay the inevitable, procrastinate paying tax, and then being duped into, at age 72, taking RMDs, required minimum distributions, thinking you're saving tax. Worst advice I've ever heard. I show people the darkness of the night if they keep doing that, and how they're going to outlive their money and pay taxes forever through their lifetime, their spouse's lifetime, and even their children who inherit those. Instead of doing that, I like to show them the brightness of the day or their future if they will get the money out. Now, people will say, what about a Roth? You mean convert to a Roth? I go, well, a Roth is a step in the right direction, but Roths only have 2 benefits. What are they? You fund a Roth with after-tax dollars, but your money accumulates tax-free in a Roth, and you can access it tax-free. The laser fund has those 2 benefits and has had those 2 benefits for over a century, long before Roths were introduced in 1997. But the laser fund has 4 additional benefits, 3 times the benefits, okay, 6 instead of 2, that Roths have. What are they? In a nutshell, with your contributions to the laser fund, you can deposit larger sums than you can to a Roth. With a Roth, you're limited to a certain percent of your income or a certain dollar amount each year. In fact, if you make too much money, you can't even participate in a Roth. That's why savvy CPAs and tax attorneys call the laser fund the rich man's Roth. You don't have to be rich to have one, but rich people can't own a Roth. So if you were a business owner and you had a banner year, you could put in $300,000. You don't have to. You could put in $30,000. If you put in just $30,000, but you could have put in $300,000, can you make up the other $270,000? Sure, anytime down the road. With a Roth, you can't do that. If you don't use the room in a given tax year, you lose it. If you don't use it, you lose it. See, Roths have strings attached. But here's a big difference. If you need to access money for any reason, you can. There are no IRS penalties attached when you take money out of a laser fund. For example, let's say I put in $300,000 during a banner year, and then all of a sudden 30 days later, I have a wonderful investment opportunity, or I can merge with my partner in business, and I need $250,000. I can access that out of my laser fund. There's no 10% penalty. It doesn't trigger tax. You can't do that with a Roth. You have to wait 5 years or till you're 59 and a half. Those are the strings attached. Now, using indexing allows you to do what I showed you, not lose when the markets go down, because your money's not in the market. Your money's linked to the market. You may not make anything, but you don't lose. And when the markets go up, you get to participate. And this is what has allowed many people to double or triple the amount they earn over a 12-year period, instead of just barely getting back what you lost twice in that decade. So you can use indexing, but the last benefit, when you ultimately die, the account increases in value and transfers totally income tax free. I'm 68 and a half. If I died tomorrow in an accident, every million that I would have in my portfolio of laser funds would blossom right now to about 2.5 million and transfer totally income tax free to my wife, to my children, grandkids, a church, a charity. There's not a Roth around that will do that. And people say, well, how much does that cost? Well, nothing's free, but it doesn't cost me anything. It's being paid for with a minuscule portion of interest that would otherwise go out the window in unnecessary income tax. So, are you interested? I would strongly recommend you look into reading and studying your own copy of the Laser Fund. So let me show you how you can claim your free copy. This is my 11th book, and it's been flying off of the warehouse shelves. You can pay $20 for it on Amazon, but don't tell them. I want to gift you a free copy. This is how you claim your free copy of this 300-page book. You can go to laserfund, laserfund.com, but just click on the link below. Go in there and you contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I always require people have a little bit of skin in the game so that they will take it serious and read it. If you do that, I'll buy the book. I'll gift it to you. This side has 200 pages, 14 chapters with all kinds of charts and graphs so that you'll understand how it works and why it's been a sacred tax-free cash cow in the Internal Revenue Code for over 100 years. But if you want to read stories of how it actually works in real life, actual historical examples, you flip the book over. And you read this side, 12 chapters, 100 pages with 62 actual client stories of how the Laser Fund is the most powerful tool that knocks the socks off of any IRA or 401k and any Roth IRA or 401k because it has 6 benefits instead of just 2.